Hi, my name is Gerhard Gschwandtner and welcome to Selling Power TV. Today we have the pleasure of speaking with Peter Astro. He's Principal Analyst Sales Effectiveness with the Aberdeen Group. Peter, let's start with a quick question. How do you define sales enablement?
Thanks, Gerhard. Sales enablement has a very different definition today than it did just a few years ago. When I was in sales some time ago, we had an interesting relationship with marketing. It was kind of unidirectional, if you will, when it came to content and assets and the brochures that they would load us up with before we would head out to the trade shows. We would go to the events loaded with all these nice new glossy brochures and give some of them out, but as we looked at them and interacted with our customers, we'd often think, this message doesn't really relate to the people that I'm talking to, and this kind of looks nice, but doesn't really tell the story. And by the end of the show or event, we would magically have supposedly given them all out to all of the attendees that were there and the people that came by our booth. In reality, sales didn't want to lug them back. We just tossed them. And we'd go back and say, hey, marketing, good job, wink, wink. You need to come up with some new creative and some new brochures. And then we would just sort of laugh behind their backs. That relationship has changed a lot. Today's sales enablement is about a marketing and sales alignment paradigm, which works a lot better than in those days. On these platforms and with the best practices that we see in our research at Aberdeen supporting them, marketers are able to use sales enablement platforms to provide access to the sales team and the front line sellers, even the channel partners, to the content, the assets, the messaging, even some of the templates for proposals and quotes and RFP responses, etc. And they both comply with the corporate regulations in terms of the look and the feel and the color palette and the logo police and all that. But they also give the sales folks the opportunity to configure and customize those assets to the needs of their individual situations. So what happens then is that the customers and prospects see something that they should be seeing, which both carries and supports the corporate messaging. And in the best of those scenarios, the salespeople themselves will do a little bit of the enterprise social collaboration thing, and they'll give the thumbs up, the thumbs down to the content that works, the content that does it. And with those sort of user ratings, if you will, the marketing folks can actually get the loop closed on what's working and what's not, even if they are not going out in the field in ride-alongs.
Thank you. I'm seeing the same trends. Peter, can you tell us how can sales intelligence help salespeople win?
So sales intelligence, is it an oxymoron? Jumbo shrimp, agree to disagree, artificial flavor, the jokes can go on. Sales intelligence was, in the past, a one-way flow of data. What we had in our CRM was information that we had about our prospects and customers, some of the bare bones amount of data that sales reps could be perhaps forced to put in there. And then sales intelligence would complement that with information about people, companies, demographics, firmographics, etc. And we would try to make smarter lists and smarter phone calls. That's really not enough. Today, there's this hidden sales cycle. Some people estimate that 70% of a sales cycle is unknown to the selling company because obviously with the web, we all have the opportunities in consumer business as well as in business to business to research and look into the organizations or products or services that we may be considering. So sales intelligence is a lot more right now. It needs to involve not just the static data about a prospect or a market, but it needs to understand their behavior as well. So with the push versus pull paradigm that we see with some of the platforms and technologies that are out there, in an ideal world, someone who is a salesperson or a channel rep or an account manager is getting just the right amount of filtered information to their inbox, to their mobile device, wherever it might come, about their market, about their targets. These are trigger events in real time. So is there a merger, an acquisition? Is there something going on in the legislative world that might impact the way I sell or run my business or my customer runs their business? And of course, the social content. When people tweet and post, sometimes it's a golden nugget of data that can tell you about their innermost desires that doesn't show up in an RFP scenario. So sales intelligence involves a lot more than just that one-way subscription of old. It's a lot more now about the holistic understanding of the behavior, and in some cases even integrated with their marketing, inbound marketing touches on our website and through our other channels of advertising and marketing that help us really holistically understand, okay, someone is now bumped up to the level from perhaps a nurturing perspective. They need to be human touched. What's the best way in which I can touch them, understanding what they've recently interacted with in terms of my content and what's recently gone on in their lives.
Peter, let's talk about customer intelligence. How can companies organize themselves so they help their salespeople have better conversations with the right prospects?
So customer intelligence is kind of the yin and the yang with sales intelligence. If sales intel is all about everything outside our firewall, what we need to know about what's going on with our prospects and customers and those folks, customer intelligence actually speaks more to the internal information that we have, but we usually don't have proper access to. Today the big term is big data. Big data is all about the megabytes and the terabytes and the exabytes of information that pile up when we have prospects and especially customers, the audit trail of all of their transactions, their history, buying from us, interacting with us, etc. What we see in our research at Aberdeen is most of the best-in-class companies are far more elegant in their ability to have this, quote, 360 customer view. Maybe 310, 330 at the most is what people can accomplish, but we can dream, of course, Gerhard, right? So the 360 customer view is all about making sure that when we have data about a customer or organization, that all the different silos of customer-touching personnel inside our enterprise, sales, marketing, service, yeah, but what about human capital management? What about the C-suite? What about the supply chain and logistics folks who actually have to service and deliver on what we sell? These folks having access through the CRM, perhaps married to the ERP, and having a single view of that customer record is absolutely crucial. So the data needs to be clean, it needs to be updated regularly, and we have to have the mechanisms to make sure that we can sort of bring together the internal customer data or account data with the ongoing real-time external data that we talked about in terms of the sales intelligence to really understand if I'm a rep and this is my screen and I am trying to sell to you, I need to know absolutely everything right here at my fingertips so that I can have the reasonable conversation with you that takes a little bit of that hidden sales cycle out of your hands and puts it back into mine.
Peter, based on what you see at Aberdeen, does live sales training still have a place in the digital world?
So sales training, we've been studying that since 2009, and every single year, believe it or not, despite the recession, yes, are we in one? No, are we not? People thinking that travel budgets are shutting down, etc. The money is going farther and farther towards sales training year after year after year. And it's not just sales training with the newer tools that we have. Traditional, instructor-led, classroom-based live sales training, especially for obviously the initial onboarding time frame of a professional seller's life, is still very, very robust. You and I are communicating here with visuals, and we're not in the same room, but we're not just on a call, and we're not just on a chat. We're having a multi-channel conversation, if you will. It's the same idea, is that most of us are in this business of marketing and sales best practices. We're visual learners. If you've ever looked at neurolinguistic programming, there's visual and kinesthetic and auditory. I'm a visual, and I'm communicating with you much more comfortably now because I can see you. So I think a lot of sellers and their managers are the same. However, the tools that are available today for reinforcement, which is just as important as that upfront training, and the studies show every single year that companies that fail to reinforce fail. Those opportunities, obviously, to use the mobile devices and the asynchronous learning, the VOD and POD and video casts, and all the different ways in which we can send little chunks of best practices out to the sales organization, but also, in the best of worlds, to have them interact with and perhaps even give the thumbs up, thumbs down on the pieces of training or the elements of best practices or reinforcement that work best for them. Those are the companies that do better in our research. And doing better in Aberdeen sales effectiveness research means you're growing revenue faster, you're growing the percentage of your reps who are hitting their quota, you're growing your deal size, shrinking your sales cycle, etc. That, of course, is our best in class. They continue to really heavily invest in sales training, traditional, and then add on the digital on top of it.
Thank you, Peter. Great insights. Let's do it again soon.
Thanks, Gerhard.